Hi, everyone. Welcome to Keep It Moving. This is a conversation about immune health, muscle strength, and exercise. It's part of the Live Better Longer series from the American Federation for Aging Research and Prevention magazine. I'm Sarah Smith. I'm the content director of Prevention, where I oversee our monthly print magazine, our site, and all the other books and DVDs and events that you would see our name on. If you haven't joined us before for a Live Better Longer event, I hope this will not be your last. We are having fascinating conversations with leading experts so that we can share not just the latest research, but understand how to apply it to our lives. AFAR is a leader in supporting aging research. The work they're committed to is literally changing people's lives. And Prevention has a long history of bringing innovative ideas to a wide audience. So those are your hosts, and today I'm thrilled to be talking to Tyesha Burks from Bowie State University and Janet Lord from the University of Birmingham in the UK. Welcome to both of you. I would like to start by having you tell us about your jobs. Like when people ask you at a party, like when we used to go to parties, what do you do? What do you tell them? And, and then if they actually seem interested, what else do you tell them? Janet, could you start us off?
Hi, Sarah. Great to be here, by the way. I usually start by saying I'm a medical researcher and that I'm trying to make sure that old age is enjoyed and not endured. So that usually then stimulates some more questions, and I tell them essentially I'm interested in what causes aging, and more importantly, what we can do about it. And I'm an immunologist, so I primarily work with the immune system. And I think as the discussion goes along, hopefully we'll persuade all of the listeners that the immune system doesn't just help us to fight infections, but it interacts with lots of parts of the body and really ensures that we're in good health all round. So that's what I usually kick the dinner parties off with.
That's great. That sounds fascinating. I'd want to talk more to you, which I get to today. Tyesha, tell us what do you do? What do you tell people you do?
Good morning. So it is great to be here. I usually am very general and casual. Oh, I'm just a scientist. And if they really want to know more, I say I'm on the search for the skeletal muscle fountain of youth. When I joined the field, a considerable amount of research was aimed at extending lifespan. So I was like, but what is the point, like what Janet was saying, of living longer, unhealthy lives? So I wanted to figure out how can I make more healthy years to the life that we're extending with regard to skeletal muscle.
Fascinating. That's such a great point. Let's not just figure out a way to live longer, right? I think you're both really committed to making that life feel great too as you're living it. So, okay, I'm really excited to hear about all the things that you have learned and know in your scientist careers. Never just a scientist. Let's see. So, Tyesha, actually, can you explain to us, to give us sort of a groundwork, what exactly happens to our muscles as we age? What's going on in our bodies if we do and don't exercise?
Sure. So as we get older, our muscles tend to get smaller and weaker. And there's a lot of factors that play a role. The number one is physical exercise, past and present. But the exact cause of this loss of muscle mass and strength is unknown. And after it reaches a certain point, it's called sarcopenia. But as we're doing this, it increases the falls in older individuals. It tends to increase disabilities and mortalities and decrease their overall quality of life because they're not able to get around like they used to. So this is caused by our genetics, by the environments that we reside in, different release of hormones and other signaling pathways that affect skeletal muscle growth. So when we exercise, think about the use it or lose it mentality. The more you use something, the more you're going to be able to use it. The less you use it, the less you'll be able to use it. So when we exercise, it benefits the entire body. There's a release of hormones. It increases our lung capacity, our heart pumping, the blood flowing, muscles are moving, and you overall feel good. We're getting rid of waste through breathing, through sweating, and our body is able to enter a recovery mode where it's going to regain homeostasis. And this is going to increase our muscle size, strength, and flexibility. Now, if you don't exercise, we're not going to challenge the body. We're not forcing it to maximize its abilities and then return to normal. So therefore, that maximum is going to decrease over time. And as it's decreasing, we're going to also lose the ability to be as physical as we once were and leave our body susceptible to diseases.
Fascinating. Thank you. And welcome to our special young guest. Janet, I want to talk about something I think that's probably on everyone's minds, and I want to talk about it early on, which is, how does, this process that Tyesha's talking about affect our ability to stay well? I think everyone's obviously thinking about COVID, but here we're entering flu season. So what's the connection between what she's talking about and everything about staying well?
Yeah, because it's not an obvious one, is it? I mean, Tyesha's told us some great stuff that as we get older, if we're not physically active enough, our muscles get smaller. If we do lots of activity, it's good for our heart as well. But people wouldn't really connect being active with the immune system, and certainly wouldn't connect muscles with the immune system. But it turns out they're really closely related. So when your muscles are moving, they produce hormones called myokines, which help to educate your immune system. Because as we get older, unfortunately, our immune system doesn't work as well. It tends to cause more inflammation and more damage. It's trying to help us fight infections, but unfortunately, at the same time, it causes excess inflammation. And people might have heard of this with COVID. They might have heard of this heightened inflammation, the cytokine storm. And what moving muscle does is it produces these myokines, which make the immune cells not quite as inflammatory. And it also, the hormones act back on the muscle to help the muscle to grow back. That's why exercise is so good. So this exercise really is going to help us, to fight infections as well. And what our research has shown, again, which people may not think about, is that if you can keep physically active all through your life, don't slow down, as Tyesha said, most of us do, unfortunately, keep physically active, then our research has shown that it slows down the aging of your immune system. So your immune system can stay young if you stay physically active.
There's sort of a magical idea that your immune system can stay young. Just to piggyback on that, for either of you, okay, what if you exercise a little or not much, and here we're coming into flu season? Can you start now? Are you going to get any benefits, or is it all about what you've done in the past?
It's a bit of both. Tyesha hinted at this, so it's your past history, but it's never too late. A lot of research has shown that if you pick up the amount of activity you do, whether it's aerobic exercise, or like a brisk walk, something like that, or whether it's resistance exercise, this strengthening of your muscles, it's never too late. You can turn back the clock. So there's been some studies in actually frail older ladies, well in their 70s, quite frail, and they did 12 weeks of resistance exercise, and they managed to gain 20 years of muscle strength back. So you can turn back the clock in your muscles 20 years. You can do it.
That's great news. I love it. So, that leads me to this question of whether age-related muscle loss is avoidable, reversible. I'd like to know where you each come down on that question, and then of course how exercise and fitness fits into that. Who would like to start on that?
I'll chip in. So I think Tyesha's busy with our young guests. So I think it is avoidable. Because we've done this study in people who were cycling, and they were well in there from the age 55 right up to 80, and they had very little muscle loss. There's possibly a bit of strength loss, but they were cyclists, so they weren't doing much strength exercises. But I personally think it's avoidable.
Tyesha,
Tyesha thinks. Do you agree with me, Tyesha, or am I far too much an optimist?
No, I just slightly disagree. I think that the reductions are inevitable. It's a natural part of aging, but I think that it occurs at different rates. So they have looked at like past athletes, and they still do have a bit of a muscle loss. But I think that the more you exercise, well, your past plays a role, but the more you do keep moving, that you can slow it down.
Yeah.
And that it depends on your activity, your genetics, and a lot of different factors. So I think it's inevitable, but it is reversible, and you can mitigate how much change occurs.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that declines in the athletes is certainly their overall fitness, a thing called VO2 max that we measure. So even poor Usain Bolt isn't able to probably break world records anymore. So as Tyesha says, even these master athletes will eventually slow down, but you can minimize it. You can really minimize that muscle loss. And that's what matters in old age. I'm sure your listeners are really not particularly wanting to be muscle bound Arnold Schwarzenegger as he was in his 20s, but they want to be able to do the things they enjoy in their life. They want to be able to get out of a chair without struggling, things like that. I think that's what matters to people, is their muscle strength, perhaps even more than mass.
Yeah, and you talked about cyclists. Were they super serious cyclists, or can we extrapolate that to the people who maybe walk 5 days a week? Is that good enough, I guess, is my question.
It's a really good question. So yeah, these were super keen guys. These are cycling 100 to 150 kilometers a week. So they're very keen, but they're not Olympians, they're just regular community people. But we have done another study where we just got people to wear like a Fitbit, and we monitored how many steps per day they did. And we found that the ones that did the 10,000 steps or more, a lot of their immune system was protected. Not all of it, but a lot of it. So it looks like, I always thought it was something, that the Fitbit makers made up 10,000 steps a day. But it looks as though there's something in it. And, you certainly 10,000 steps a day, it looks as though it certainly helps your immune system.
That is fascinating. I love that, because that's, 10,000 is not nothing, but it is within reach, I think, for
it is, yeah. You'd be amazed though, in the sample we did, we had about 250 older adults. Only 10% of them were doing that amount. So but it just shows it's doable. The vast majority were down at 3,000, 4,000. They were really not very active at all.
Interesting. At Prevention, a lot of the people who tell us that they have started walking, it's often, for two main reasons. One is maybe they were diagnosed with prediabetes or diabetes, and they're trying to work on a health condition. But a lot of them are also trying to find a way to lose weight as they age. And I wonder if you could speak to that and how it fits in to this. I think probably there might be a lot of people on this call too who are like, but what I also want to know, I don't just want to know how to be strong. I want to know how to, look maybe more like I did. Is that a part of this conversation?
Yeah, I think it is. Again, a lot of research has shown that you'll lose the weight quicker if you combine exercise with reducing your calorie intake. It'll certainly come off, and you'll tone up more. You'll actually your shape change will change quicker if you're doing exercise. But as you get older as well, it's important to do those resistance exercises, because you have to be a little bit careful that you don't lose too much weight and lose muscle. And Tyesha might be able to comment on this. It's a slight risk when you get into your, say late 70s, you would have to be careful. And I would say definitely try and do that resistance exercise as well, to make sure that as well as losing the fat in your body, you don't lose your muscle as well. So that's one thing you got to be a little bit careful of. So I'm going to keep plugging resistance exercise because it's so important.
Tyesha, what could you add either to the weight loss issue or the exercising as you age? I think there's both. I want to exercise for maybe even new reasons now, but I don't have the stamina that I used to, or I'm worried about, injury or something. How do you support people with those questions?
Start slow and low and do what you can. And then as you can do more, progress slowly. But I think that don't look at the end result. Take each step as a victory, and it's all going to be small steps on increasing how much you can do. So of course we can't run as fast as we used to. We can't lift as much as we used to. But like Janet was saying, if we can get out of a chair without holding on to something, that's a victory. If we can walk to the door without being winded or carry a bag of groceries in the house. So I think that people should make like realistic goals. No, you might not just go and run a marathon, but you can get out of bed today and you can move around more. And I think too, like to the end of the Fitbit and an accountability partner, it helps. So you have one saying, come on, we can do this. Come on, let's go. So every little bit does count. But do try to do more than one a day, one day a week rather. But don't overdo it and consult a doctor along the way. But small, reasonable goals that will overall get you to where you want to be, which is a healthier life and an independent life for longer.
Right, that independent life. I think that's a great goal. A really great way to think about it too. You know, that we're not just talking about this size muscle or that amount of specific weight. That it's really about, you know, what we're doing for our future.
Mm, mm. And I wondered, Sarah, whether your audience, because we're talking about body weight, whether they really wondered about, you know, why fat is so bad. It's not because it stops us doing our jeans up very easily, you know, and we need a bigger dress size. We know that fat is very pro-inflammatory, so it's one of the things that causes this inflammation as well. And one of the things that causes aging, causes you to age faster, are these cells called senescent cells, these old cells that build up in the body. And we know the place they love to live is fat tissue. So if you exercise, there's studies mainly in mice at the moment showing that yes, you reduce the amount of fat in your body, but you also reduce the amount of senescent cells in your fat tissue. So exercises, I always say, is anti-aging as well.
Right, right. So that's really fascinating to hear, because like to think about exercise is not just what's going to then happen on the outside, but what's going to happen to you on the inside when you.
Yeah. And long-term benefit, as Tyesha said, you know, you exercise, you got the benefits for years because it's going to slow down your aging process.
You know, tell me, in this field that you are working in, you know, what else exciting is happening, and what are you looking forward to in the future learning more about?
I think it's such an exciting time to be in aging research. You know, for years it was thought to be not academically challenging. You know, there's nothing you can do about aging, and now we're realizing, you know, whether it's through lifestyle, that you can really affect your aging, the way you age and how you reach old age. But if you can't do that, some of the exciting stuff, a lot of it funded by AFAR, is saying, well, can we actually develop drugs or test drugs that will slow down the aging process and allow us to prevent or to treat many of the age-related diseases that are required. So those senescent cells I mentioned, there are trials in humans now with drugs that will kill them, and managing to improve health in old age. So there's a study in a disease called idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, which is a terrible lung disease. And they've treated these patients with the senolytics, and their physical function, their frailty reduced just after 9 treatments. It's quite amazing.
Wow.
And I think, yeah, and I think again the metformin study, which has been discussed in some of the other AFAR webinars, this is a drug used to treat type 2 diabetes, but it also reduces some of the aging processes. And there are trials planned to see if that can slow down the development of age-related disease. So I think it's just a fascinating time to be in aging research, and for older adults as well, that, you know, I think the times are not too far away where we know that, you know, aging, old age being ill age is not inevitable anymore.
Tyesha,
Yes, I agree with Janet. And I like how she ended it, because most people do think, oh, when you get older, it comes with being frail, and it doesn't have to. So I am excited to see if, with me, I'm interested in, like, can we pinpoint when the body goes from a youthful to an aging profile? And if we can figure that out, then maybe we'll have a time to start these treatments that are coming about. And as well as with the treating, so I like to look at like regeneration and disuse atrophy with age. And will these same treatments play a role there? How will getting rid of like the senescent cells affect that and different things of that nature? So not only being able to increase the steady state of aging, but so these co-founding factors and comorbidities that arise.
Um, Tell me, when you say that question of when will the body go from youthful to older age, that seems like such a, I'm glad you put it that way, it's such a really important crux of it. How are you and your colleagues working to figure that out? Like, what do you look at?
I think the first thing is to change our mindset. A lot of previous studies in aging look at young and old. So there's these two end time points, but it has to be what's going on in the middle. Because by the time an aging phenotype shows itself, it's too late. Those mechanisms and signaling has been going on for years before you see the final symptoms. So if we can start looking at aging, and maybe if we're looking at mice like mid-age, 12 months old, 9 months old, to see what's going on. And if we can get a signaling path or signaling profile from young to old, we can see when things are going up and down. And I know it may not be the same for all, but it's better than looking at it when it's too late.
Right.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So yeah, we've got studies. I don't do much work in mice. I focus on humans, but we've got a similar approach. What we're doing is taking adults and actually repeatedly looking at them as they get older, and particularly as they acquire these multimorbidities. And we're looking then at the processes. What's happening? Why do some older people get a particular group of diseases, cardiovascular disease, diabetes? Why do another one mainly get arthritis? Why does a third group mainly get dementia? Why is that? Yes, there's a genetic component, but there's more to it than that. And so we're following them as they go along and looking, when they develop these diseases, which order they develop them in. And when we understand that, when we understand which mechanisms are driving these clusters of disease, then we can tackle that, rather than what we do at the moment. The poor older adult with 3 or 4 different diseases has to go see 3 or 4 different medical doctors, ends up on 13, 14 pills. They must rattle sometimes. I think they're so full of pills. So it's this polypharmacy. What we want to avoid that. We want to try and get in early, like Tyesha said, and try and slow down that trajectory into multimorbidity. So that's a lot of the research we're doing, trying to understand that as people go along. Tyesha's quite right. You've got to follow people through, and you can't just do young and old. That tells you something, but it doesn't tell you what the pathway is.
Right. And then when you're following them, Janet, are you what other kind of work are you doing with them besides, sort of tracking what happens to them? I mean, you were talking earlier about senescent cells, and maybe you can explain a little bit more about that, what that is. Is that something you're actually looking at in the people that you're studying?
Yeah, yes. So in my area, so one thing, I'm particularly interested in the immune system. And your immune system has lots of jobs. It helps to fight infection, but it also is important in wound healing. It helps prevent cancer. But as you get older, what happens is the cells of the immune system become more senescent. And by that, we mean it's an older cell, but also it doesn't carry out its function that it used to. And particularly in the immune system and other senescent cells in the body. So you can get senescent muscle cells, you can get senescent, what we call stromal cells. And they're highly pro-inflammatory. So they pump out inflammatory hormones, but they also release things called proteases. So they digest the tissue around the cell. So do you know, when you get older, I'll demonstrate here, if you pick your skin up, when you're nice and young, it goes back nice and smooth. And when you get old, like I am, it just it's saggy. So these senescent cells, we've known about them for years, since the early 1960s. And you take a skin sample from myself or from Tyesha, and Tyesha will have hardly any senescent cells in her skin, and mine's full of them because I'm older. But it was what we call associative data. We didn't know it caused aging. And then wonderful experiments from the US, from the Mayo Clinic, developed a mouse that every time a senescent cell arose in its body, it deleted it, it killed it. So they made a mouse with no senescent cells. And guess what? You know, the mouse had, you know, it did develop some age-related diseases, but it was much a lower level, and the mouse lived longer. So we had the first proof. And in the immune system, it's the same. We get old immune cells, and unfortunately, they then are no longer doing what they should do to fight infection, and instead they cause inflammation and they damage tissues. So again, that's one of the things that's probably happening in COVID, that an older adult gets coronavirus, they mount an immune response, and the immune response, unfortunately, rather than helping them fight the disease, causes more damage, because there's these highly senescent cells in there that damage tissues. And we think that's one of the reasons why older patients really don't do very well when they get that virus, or indeed any virus. Flu's the same problem. So that's really what we're trying to do about it in my own group.
That really clarifies it. It really explains it. Thank you. I'm wondering, do you know, did that Fountain of Youth mouse, did it exercise, or it didn't need to?
I often say that to the people who you know, breed the mice. Do you give them a little running wheel? Because if not, they are a really good model for human aging. They don't have they can't watch daytime TV or anything, but they're sat around in their cages for far too long. So, but yeah, that mouse had really good muscles. It had really nice young muscles. You see the pictures of it. Tyesha probably knows the paper. You see the poor old mouse there with its little, you know, curved spine and hardly any muscles, and then you see this mouse that's got no senescent cells, and it's hey, I'm up for it. You know, it's an amazing mouse.
It sounds ready for a movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's got to be a movie about that mouse.
You know, before we move to questions from the audience, because we're getting a lot, I would love if could each of you share a piece of advice or two that you would give to people based on what you know from your research? Tyesha, would you share?
Yes, so great question. So I would say start moving and keep moving. It's never too late, and be easy on yourself. So don't get up and think like, oh, this is too much, too tiring, I can't do it. And I think like find your motivation. A lot of older individuals are capable of doing it, but they don't have the motivation and they don't see a point in doing it. They don't think it's going to help. So I think if you just start today, get up and walk a little bit more than you normally would, and then try to do things like standing and sitting, walking up and down steps, things that you would normally do, reaching into a cabinet to keep the mobility around different parts of the body, that will show a huge difference, and do it 2 or 3 times a week.
Oh, that's great. So you're talking about not just, you know, okay, I'm going to put on this workout and do it, but, you know, making sure to reach for things and turn and all that.
Right, because ultimately you want to be able to do your normal daily routines.
Right.
So
right.
if you practice at it, you'll get better at it. It won't hurt so much or feel like a chore when you have to do it.
That's great. So even when we're, you know, putting groceries away, we can feel like I'm doing something good for my body.
Right.
And, okay, that's good. Janet, what piece of advice would
you? Well, Tyesha's already pinched one of mine, because I always say to my older adults, go up and down stairs, you know, for no good reason. Just go up. If you've got stairs in your house, go up and down for say 3-4 times. It's a fantastic exercise. But I'm going to do a linked one then, because I'm going to say don't sit for too long, because that's the other thing we know. If you go and do your 15-20 minutes of exercise, but then you spend 10 hours either at your desk, or like we're all bad examples, all of us here, sat here, then you undo a lot of the good that you've done. That's becoming clear now. So I would say we don't know how long you need to sit for before you do damage. That research is ongoing, but I would say, you know, don't sit for more than an hour. Get up, move around, even if it's just going to make yourself a cup of tea, or go up and down the stairs a couple more times, but don't sit for long lengths of time. We know it's really bad for you.
Right. Well, everyone who's listening, feel free to stand up and turn around and then sit down and continue.
Yeah.
I'm going to start taking some questions from the audience and delivering them to you guys. we have a question about resistance exercise. Okay, so can you please describe resistance exercise in more detail? And then another is, how does that build, how does resistance exercise build muscle to maintain your balance, since falls, of course, are such a concern? So let's dig into resistance a little bit. What does that look like?
So yeah, it basically describes anything where you're sort of pushing your muscles against a force. So it can be something so if you go down the gym, it's these weightlifting machines, but you don't need to do that. You can take, a can of beans or something in both hands and lift your arms up and down. That's a nice resistance exercise. Some of your audience may have heard about resistance bands. These elastic bands that you can pull apart. That's resistance. It's going, as the name says, resistance. You're going against some sort of a power. And it's important because that stimulates your muscle to make hormones to grow the muscle. Tyesha said at the start, your muscles shrink. But if you do that resistance exercise, it produces hormones that help your muscles to grow so that you can keep that strength.
All right, thank you. Tyesha, anything to add to that about balance in particular, or just resistance exercise?
So yes, I agree with everything Janet was saying, and you will see a difference over time. So these little changes and just practicing, like a can of beans, a bottle of water, different things to moving your legs up and down while you're sitting will help you to increase the balance. So it will help to strengthen your muscles, increase your flexibility and your balance, and ultimately decrease the falls.
Mm, mm.
Okay, great.
And how it helps, can you imagine that when you're young, if you sort of trip over something, you've got enough muscle strength that you can correct yourself. But if you've lost your muscle strength, when you trip, the chances are you'll fall. So that's why it helps with falls and balance as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That makes sense. We talked a bit about walking earlier, and someone is asking about, with the colder weather coming and walking outside is less feasible, is there an in-the-house version of walking 10,000 steps a day? Yeah, we have a couple people asking about that, who used to go to the gym a lot and now they're walking and now they're worried about the cold.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it, Tyesha? So, I mean, cold per se, I would say still go outside. You're still going to get your muscles going, your lungs breathing. It's just when it's icy weather that that's when folks really need to be careful. And inside, yeah, literally, just, walking around your living room, or, if you do have some stairs, might up and down the stairs, just do what you can. The worst thing is to do nothing, is to just give in and say, hey, it's winter, I'm just going to watch a bit more daytime TV. Just do something, tide you through the winter. And then when spring arrives, you can be out there ready to go.
Right. I would walk down the longest hallway you have several times an hour. If you do invest in a Fitbit or things, like they have alerts that say you need to move. There's apps for it that tell you to get up and move. There are some videos that you can watch that will get you walking, like show you how to walk around the house, walk in place. If you have something to step on and down, like instead of sitting while you watch TV, just sit there and stand and walk. And all these things will help you get to the 10,000 steps.
Yeah.
Yeah, stairs. Although I'll add to the point about going outside, I grew up in Chicago, where they say there's no bad weather, only bad clothing. That's nice. That's totally different. And lightning. There's bad weather. I'll caveat that. But yes, I thanks for the great ideas for the indoor too, because I think, let's be real, sometimes we're going to be inside. Okay, so so that's interesting. We just talked about walking, and we talked about resistance training, and someone wants to know, is strength training or aerobic exercise more important for building immunity? In particular was the question, but in general.
Yeah, well, in that area for immunity, to be honest, we know the most about aerobic exercise. That's where most of the research has been done. But my guess is that that the strength exercise will help as well, because it's your muscle moving and doing work. And if it's doing that, it should still produce these hormones. So although we've done a lot less research on the strength side of things, my guess is that would help as well. I don't know what Tyesha thinks, but I think both would help. Aerobics certainly does.
I would say do both as well. I think it would be the yeah, in walking versus lifting up that bag of groceries or things. So you don't want to just do one and not the other. They would go hand in hand.
Yeah, yeah.
Our next question is, you mentioned past exercise has an impact and different rates of change from past athletes. So how do exercise habits when we were younger or in middle age affect how our bodies function later in life?
Well, a lot of this, it's this concept, it's called of resilience and reserve, that you're building up some resilience. And certainly if you've done exercise when you're younger, you'll have this, this measure, the higher VO2 max. So think of it that you've got your set point higher, and you might still decline, but you've got your set point higher. So you will decline, but you won't get to the lower point that a person who's never done exercise will reach. That's how I try to explain it. I don't know what Tyesha thinks. I think that's the only way I can think of explaining it.
That's what I was going to say. Like the maximum I talked about, pushing your body to its max would be higher if you previously exercised.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, speaking of course, as you age, are there exercises that are more effective that you should do at different ages? And again, the person who asked this is specifically asking about immune health, but I would love if you could speak to that in a general sense. Someone in their 40s versus someone in their 70s, should they be doing the same exercises or not?
My view is that yes, they should do the same. I personally think that as you get older, once you get into your 70s, I would focus on the strength test, exercise, to really keep your muscles strong. Because as we said, that's what really matters. You've got to be able to get out of that chair without help and that sort of thing. It really matters. But they are both important. The amount you can do might change, but they're both important. The aerobic, it's important for your immune health, important for your heart, important for your brain as well. We know that if you exercise, your risk of cognitive decline is reduced as well. So they're both important. But if I had to plug one when you're in your over 70s, I would say resistance. Try to keep your strength up.
I would agree, because that would help the muscles and play with the immune and everything else. I would agree.
Yeah.
And yeah, as you get older, you may do less. And I would try to do a varied exercise.
Yeah.
Like keep variation in, move as many body parts as possible.
Yeah, good point.
Are you saying, so would somebody move as many body parts as possible in one sort of session? Or is you hear like the tough guys talk about leg day, arm day, like are we supposed to be tough guys too? Or is it, how would you position that?
You can do it on different days so that they're healing at different rates, because remember, you need to exercise more than one day a week. So if a person does everything one day, they may feel like, oh, that's enough for this week. So let's spread it out.
Yeah, it's best to, as Tyesha said, do it regularly is the key thing. Don't think you'll do your 150 minutes exercise on a Sunday and then sit for the rest of the week. Not a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Here's one, while we're talking about building your muscles, someone wants to know how effective are muscle supplements that you see at vitamin stores. What does the science tell us about how helpful they are, especially for an older adult?
It's really, really interesting question. So in the vitamins, for muscle, D is the big one, vitamin D. Vitamin B helps you to replace tissues as well. Some of these supplements are high protein supplements. Now, it's really interesting as you get older, your ability to respond to actually exercise and protein does decrease. It's called anabolic resistance. So unfortunately, as you get older, you do have to do a bit more resistance exercise. So the recommendations are, I think it's 2 bouts a week if you're under 65, 4 bouts of resistance exercise if you're over 65. So you have to do a bit more. So they can help, but exercise is what you need. Lots of studies that have shown they've given people just the protein supplement without exercise. It does very little. You have to have the exercise. The two together are what will help you. Just taking a protein supplement by itself and not exercising will do nothing.
So you're nodding along.
Yes, I totally agree. So while you can take it, if you really want to, you could probably save the money and just exercise.
Yeah. Yeah, save yourself a few dollars, just exercise.
And you can get a lot of the same things in your food. So vary your diet. Look for
Yeah,
foods that contain those same supplements. It's a
absolutely.
way.
Yeah.
There are a few questions here about food. So let's look at those. There's a few. Intermittent fasting seems to be a hot topic. People are wondering how that affects aging muscle and the immune system. So, what do you two think about intermittent fasting as it relates to diet and exercise as we're aging here?
Yeah, it can be good. Again, a lot of the studies are still in mice at the moment. I've got to admit, I do intermittent fasting, so I do actually do that. It certainly helps because it stimulates some of the processes in the body that are anti-aging. There's a thing called autophagy, which gets rid of basically the rubbish, the garbage in your body. And so intermittent fasting can stimulate that. Again, I would just always say, be careful, do exercise as well, because if you just do the fasting, you're going to lose your muscle as well. So it's getting everything in balance. But there's reasonable evidence that it certainly stimulates these anti-aging processes and brings this inflammation down, that we know is so bad. Certainly intermittent fasting, there's quite a few studies in humans now that have shown that it can reduce the inflammation. So luckily today's not my fasting day, it's Monday, so I'm quite happy it's not Monday.
So you are committed to it. So it's not something
I've done it for many, many years, even before I got into aging research. It was actually my American aunt who she used to call it her detoxify day. So just one day a week, she would just drink water. And so I thought, oh, I'll try that. And I've sort of more or less done it ever since, really. So just one day a week, I just drink water.
Wow.
Yeah. You feel good. I feel, some people say, do you do it when you're on holiday? And I said, well, yeah, because if I don't do it, I feel really weird. And my body's got so used to doing it that if I don't do it, it just doesn't feel right. People say, well, do you get tired? And I say, well, no, it's the opposite. When I'm having my water day, you sort of like, because it increases some of your stress hormones, you sort of, I say you feel like wired at the end of the day. So the only down thing is it's not easy to sleep. But I'm fine the next day. But it's very, yeah, so it's very interesting.
Good to hear a first person take on it from a scientist. I'm gonna move on. Tyesha, unless do you have something to add about intermittent fasting? Because I have other questions about nutrition.
No, Janet is the expert. I have never tried it. I have no desire to.
Yeah,
you give it a go, Tyesha. You give it a go.
People who do it are always like, do it, right?
Just do it. Although it doesn't suit everybody. My sister tried it. She hates it. She couldn't do it at all.
Yeah. Figure out what works.
Yeah.
What I've heard is that you can't just do it for like 2 weeks and think that you've done it.
You've got to adopt it.
What about nutrition in terms of COVID recovery for older adults? Do either of you have insight into that? I know it's not exactly your area, but
I guess we don't know enough at the moment. We do know that a lot of patients are in a poor state after they've had COVID, and they're developing this thing called long COVID. And one of the features is they're very tired, very, very tired, a lot of fatigue. And so again, I think what a lot of things would be recommended was just get into some gentle exercise, because a lot of them, they've lost a lot of muscle. They've been in bed for weeks, some of them, on ventilators, so they've lost a lot of muscle. They've still got this inflammation. So they just need to build themselves up. So quite a few go through, rehabilitation to try and get their strength back, but it's a long road. And we don't really know the answer at the moment, if we're honest. We're in the early days of this virus and knowing how to deal with it when you've got it, and how to improve outcomes afterwards. So yeah, it's going to be a long road with this thing.
Yeah, it's a good reminder. You mentioned inflammation again, and someone had a question. They said that people talk about inflammation as a double-edged sword. So what does that mean? And how can scientists design effective treatment if immunity has both beneficial and detrimental effects?
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting question.
Oh yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. So inflammation is important in your immune system, because it's basically the way that your immune cells communicate that there's danger. So you get an infection, and one of the things that happens, the inflammation, and inflammation is just basically immune hormones. So they whiz off. They tell the immune cells where the infection is, and they attract them to the site of infection. But the double-edged sword bit is, unfortunately, they can also damage the tissue. So, so there's always that double-edged sword. Yes, you need inflammation to alert the immune system to get it active. It activates the immune system so that you can get rid of that infection. But it also has this downside that it damages tissues, particularly your cardiovascular system, the blood vessels and the heart. They're very susceptible to these immune hormones. So that's the double-edged side of it. And designing things to target it, that's like, you want to dampen it down so that it doesn't cause the damage, but you mustn't dampen it too much, otherwise you'll stop the immune system. That's why some of your listeners will have heard of one of the things that's looked to be helpful with COVID is dexamethasone, and that's a steroid. It dampens down the immune system. If you give it too early, it wouldn't be a good idea, because it would perhaps prevent the immune system from fighting the virus. So it's good to give it later on, when the immune system isn't helping you anymore. In fact, it's hurting you. And that's when you need to dampen down the inflammation. So it's always a balance of when you give a drug.
That's tricky. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a similar thing in skeletal muscle regeneration. So you need the initial immune response to get things done, to activate the skeletal muscle stem cells to turn on and regenerate. But if it persists, then it will lead into scarring of the skeletal muscle as opposed to rebuilding it. So that has the double-edged sword too. And then trying to figure out, when do you start treatment?
That's a great example. Yeah. So you need your inflammation to, as Tyesha says, repair and regenerate. Too much of it, you get a scar. And then, yeah, it's a great example.
And then, so just to help me understand, so then exercise's role is in part to
reduce the inflammation.
Or what?
Sorry?
Is it to dampen it down at the right time? How does it fit in?
Yeah. So the good thing about exercise is that it will, if you do exercise regularly, as I said, that the muscle produces these myokines that sort of educates your immune system to be a little bit less pro-inflammatory, so that it doesn't go over the top. So that's quite good, is that it doesn't shut it down altogether. It just educates it. So a lot of the inflammation comes from a cell called a macrophage, and there are like two flavors. One of them is highly pro-inflammatory, and the other one stops the inflammation. And if you exercise, you get a little bit more of the dampened down ones, so that you don't tend to overshoot and get too much inflammation. So that's why exercise is so good, and is dampening the inflammation at the right time.
Here's an interesting question. The listener writes, my understanding is that when we get older, our vessels and metabolic system don't work properly. How do we guarantee energy for this new muscle mass produced by exercise? And that it doesn't compromise other organs' nourishment? We want to speak to.
We
Got
can't
to go for that, Tyesha. You go for that one.
We can't guarantee it.
Okay.
I mean, part of unhealthy aging is everything is out of whack. So if you continue to move, we're trying to return the body back to being normal again, to being youthful. I think that's going to be one of those, don't overdo it. Start slow, slowly build up, so that you're not causing more harm than good. And proper eating, and that's going to ensure that you have the energy to do what you need to do.
Yeah.
But
and again, sort of, that's a really good point. So that your questioner asked about, the blood vessels and things, but they're damaged by this inflammation. So if you exercise, you bring down that inflammation so that the blood vessels and the heart are not damaged as much. So they're really interlinked. And that energy for your moving muscles, you've got, your listeners might have heard of mitochondria. They're the little organelles inside your cells that produce the energy. And the more you exercise, the more you have of these. So again, it's just good all round. It, as Tyesha said, it keeps your body in balance and just gets things back to normal.
Mhm.
So it's not taking energy away from, you know, your blood system. In fact, it's helping it because it's making it less damaged.
Here's a fun one. What about singing as exercise? Can we count that? We're gonna maybe say it there. Maybe say no.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to exercise your vocal cords and it's going to be good for your lungs, but it's not enough to be helping your major muscles. Good activity for mental health, particularly if you sing with your friends and your family. It's great that way. I believe all activity is good, but it's not going to do anything for your skeletal muscles, that one. But
Right.
sing away. You just never want to hear me sing. When I was a little girl in the music classes, the music teacher used to say, "Janet, will you please mime?" I'm tone deaf. You don't want to hear me singing. No, horrible, horrible noise.
That's what the shower is for.
Yeah.
Sing if you enjoy it. Like, it will help with lung capacity and it will help with the diaphragm muscle. But I think
That's true.
sing and move, like walk and sing, or
Oh yeah.
walk in place, walk up the steps, do a little dance, like
Yeah.
supplement your singing.
Yeah, I like that idea.
That's a great idea. Here's a question about the relationship between exercise and cognition. What is the relationship and how does that work?
Yeah, so again, yeah, lots of studies. It's good old inflammation again. So we know that this increased inflammation with age is one of the things that contributes to cognitive decline and things like dementia. So if you can keep that inflammation down, particularly a type of dementia called vascular dementia. So again, if you're exercising, your blood vessels, your vascular system is better. So it will reduce the chances of getting something like vascular dementia. So yeah, it's just all round good.
Mhm. Exercise, it forces the brain to burn some energy too. So it's almost like exercising the brain as well, causing it to have to release certain hormones and things. So it is truly a whole body effect.
Mhm. I feel like there was one related to, and how does exercise and cognition and the nutrition that we talked about a little bit relate to the quality of sleep? Do you, either of you, have insight into the connection to sleep?
Yeah, not so much there. Sleep is one of these areas that we know it changes as you age, so you tend to wake up earlier in the day. It's called phase shift, and the quality of your sleep isn't as good. So there's certainly evidence that the more you exercise, you do have better quality sleep. But I wouldn't say the field is any more developed than that. I don't know if Tyesha knows anymore. It's amazing how little we know about sleep, you know, amazing how little we know. But certainly, and one thing that helps is certainly is try to keep to regular times. So always have your meals at the same time, get up and go to bed at the same time. That educates the clocks in your body and helps them to stay regular. Because if you think about it, particularly as you get older, you retire from work. And for the first time in your life, you don't get up at the same time every day, eat your meals at the same time every day. You suddenly have all this freedom, but it's not great for your body clocks because your body clocks have been trained for 40 years to eat at the same time, get up, and you throw them out of whack. So if you can try and keep to roughly the same timings, then that should help as well.
Yes, that's what I was going to add, like routine.
Yeah,
Routine will help. And in today's world of technology and things, like making sure that you're turning off the TV or the time that you're looking at blue lights and things will probably help you to drift to sleep earlier and stay asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might have been something that was affecting. I mean, we heard about a lot of sleep problems, especially early on in the pandemic, in addition to the stress change of everything in the world. But everyone had different routines suddenly.
Yeah.
Hard to manage. Yeah. Let's see. Endorphins. How are endorphins affected by the aging process? Do either of you have insight into that? And if so, can you share how that works? That's a
I don't know whether there is any effect of age on endorphins. Yeah, I don't know. No, that stumped me. That is a question. No, I don't.
All right, we got a stumper.
Yeah, I got a stumper there. I don't know the answer to that one. I don't know whether Tyesha does.
No, I have never thought about looking at endorphins with age.
Interesting.
No. Yeah.
All right. Well, if the person who asked is maybe it's time to put your scientist hat on.
Yeah, get a research project going. Yeah.
Here's one that might be a stumper, but I bet you guys might have an answer. Is what about people who physically cannot exercise or have some limitations? What are the alternatives, or what's being done in research regarding exercise for the elderly?
Yeah, okay. So yeah, it depends what your limitation is. You might have limited ability to perhaps walk, but you could still do your resistance band exercises. That would help you. I do a lot of work with injured veterans. And so we've done some work, in double amputees and things, again, trying to build their strength up, just using upper body strength instead. A lot of them might be able to still swim. And if they can't even do that, then you can actually do magnetic stimulation of the muscle. We've done that while they're in recovery in hospital to try and make sure they don't lose the muscle. So it simulates exercise. But I would always, I don't know, Tyesha thinks, just try to do something. Anything is better than nothing. You might be limited in what you can do, but there's always, find what you can do rather than say what you can't do, I would
Right.
say.
I agree. And if there's a swimming pool near you and you can do aerobics exercise and things, the water will really help you to overcome some of those limitations.
Mm.
Great points. Great. We are running out of time. I cannot believe how the time has flown. You both are so interesting and experienced, so I really appreciate all of your expertise here. Is there any final thought you'd like to leave us with today before we say goodbye? I sort of asked.
Say, keep moving. Keep moving. That's it.
Here. Keep moving.
Yeah.
In whatever way you can. That's terrific.
Yeah.
All right, thank you both so much, and thank you all so much for attending. I would like to remind everyone to follow AFAR and Prevention Mag on social media, because we have more Live Better Longer webinars planned for 2021. There have been a lot of questions today about intermittent fasting and some other issues like that, and we are going to tackle those head on in the future. We might have to make them full Q&A. I don't know, there are always so many questions about them. But we welcome you all to those. So follow us, and thank especially today to Tyesha Burks and Janet Lord for your incredible wisdom, and we really appreciate everyone who joined us today to listen and learn. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your week.